There's only like 65 Signar blisters on the wall.
I think it's 100 actually.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Lords of Wargames and Hobbies video. I'm Chris, this is Jay. And before we get into our topic of the day, just want to let you know that you can support us on Patreon for as little as $3 a month. Help us make videos like this, and we can have more interaction with you guys and answer your questions as well. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of like still in the aftermath wave of the latest Games Workshop purging of units.
Yep. Culling.
That's a better word, actually. Yeah, culling. And I think, we obviously we steered our ship right into the storm, and we're like, we're going to try to provide a little bit of like context to, why this is important is for a business to do to maintain its product lines, in a sustainable way. How other examples of how other companies have done the same thing and succeeded. Mm-hmm. And today I think we were going to chat a little bit about a company that didn't really do it very much and didn't succeed.
It didn't, yeah. So for those of you who may or may not know, most of you are probably aware of a company called Privateer Press, who made a product, or their main game, War Machine, which rose to prominence right in a specific era when Games Workshop was kind of in a lull. So I guess 2009-10 time.
Yeah.
This was distinct for Chris and I's memories because I think, Chris was I left Games Workshop to Dakota to finish my college stuff, and then but there was a moment where we started started playing some non-Games Workshop games, and a lot of independent stores like ours today. It became a massive pillar of their store. Like, you would walk into stores, at least here in Ontario, and I think in lots of places in the U.S. too, where it had a section that rivaled the 40K wall easily.
Yeah, definitely.
It was. They were like, you would have fanboys and people being like, the games are toe to toe and fighting for supremacy of the at its height anyway of the like tabletop war game landscape, where of at least in the category of like armies fighting. And I think part of their appeal was also that the game was a little bit smaller than a 40K game. I think you played on a 4x4, and you had maybe 30% less models, but people seemed to like the change anyway. And the fact it was a great stick, F you to Games Workshop at the time.
I think that, primarily
part of it.
It had that, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. It had that fresh, we're a new company, we're not the bad guy. Mm-hmm. We're making a game for the players. I think it was really
a game for the players. Yeah,
I think it really touched on that at a moment where Games Workshop had maybe lost sight. As a they're not nearly what they are today in terms of size, but as a big, the big player, the monopolized player in the industry, right?
Yeah. And so I remember collecting and playing the game too. I thought there was a sweet spot of time where the miniature quality was about on par. They didn't have a lot of plastic, but the metals were pretty cool. They had these like very steampunky these things called warjacks, which were these like hulking kind of dreadnought sized models, and then you had infantry, and it was also like steam powered with vents, and then you had these like guys called warcasters, which were kind of like effectively the king in chess. So you had your king chess piece, and you were trying to checkmate your opponent's king chess piece, basically. Mm-hmm. Their warcaster. You had to kill their warcaster to win the game. And and then the rule set was very tight. It was written to be a player's. That was probably one of the arguably one of the better rule sets ever written. It was very well received. And anyway, so the game was having its success. Now, the one thing that happened, though, sometime in that era, maybe once they were really reaping their success, is I don't know if it was the game designers, I don't recall exactly, but they basically said, I think even the head writer had some hubris to say, we don't need to make another edition, this one's perfect or something, which is kind of a business poison pill, to be honest.
Yeah. Which is what the players want to hear, right? Like, ultimately, people that are disenfranchised with Games Workshop after, they're always updating their game, my books don't work anymore, I got to buy new stuff. That's like, the people are like, yeah, this is great, I can just use these models forever.
Yeah, and they sort of did. And one of the things they also did is they pledged or said that they were never going to retire anything. They just were going to keep appending everything would be viable. They did some things too that was designed to keep the they kind of pioneered, but they did a thing that we see very common now, where models were pointed in low numbers. So an expensive model would be 10 or 15 points, and a cheap model would be 3 points or something. And you fielded small units. So this, I'm only mentioning this because I feel, in my opinion, it does kind of compound the problem as it goes on. So anyway, fast forward some years, and I guess like 5 or 6 years, where they're now coexisting with 40K. They're starting to run into their own problems of like how do we continue sales growth? How do we maintain all these lines?
Yeah, and then they were basically doing the bolt-on thing, like any other company, right? So like this expansion, we're gonna add like a big model to everyone's collection, and then we're gonna do the same thing but in our Hordes game, and then we're gonna do, I don't know, another smaller thing, but it's also big. There was like a couple of things like that.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. And this again, and this is what happens. And I forget how many. So at one point they have. So they started the classic game. Kind of had this, like, I think it was 6 factions.
That sounds right.
And they were kind of like they felt like kind of like nations within like a fictional continent. And they're all kind of at war with each other. And then they added a major expansion, which they called the Hordes, which was like it was a bit asymmetrical, because the regular game was based on the Warcasters and the Jacks and how they behaved, and then the Hordes were like more like you had more beasts and monsters.
It was a Fury or whatever, right?
They had this like other completely different mechanic.
Yeah. That was just objectively better.
And I think, and I think it added like another half a dozen. So they bulked up the game quite significantly. And again, for those of you that are or War Machine diehards, forgive me. Like, I played the game for like a year or two.
Yeah.
This video isn't so much about that part, and it doesn't matter how well I played the game or what I knew about those details. It's more of the business side, and I'll add a little bit at the end about. Because when we opened the store, the game was still kind of in its, like, I would say, approaching its. Well, we didn't know at the time.
It was in a decline phase.
We decided, we made the conscious decision not to carry it at all, because we felt, based on all the stuff we're talking about today, that there was no path to sustainability. And anyway, so you have all these factions.
And that's in 2015, mind you.
Yeah.
So that's 9 years ago.
So anyway, I don't know how old their second ed must have approached 6, 7, 8 years or whatever. And it started now. If you went to the website and you went to filter by unit, it was like hundreds and hundreds of units per faction.
Yeah.
And they all and they kept everything. And you started to run into problems where you had, and I mentioned the points numbers, where you had like 15 units that were in the 3-point range, and another like 8 units that are in the 4-point range. And how do you start differentiating their effectiveness?
Yeah.
Because what'll happen is you'll invariably just pick the best one of each category, but then stores are still like, but I carry everything on the shelf because you guys aren't retiring anything.
Right.
So, and when they would make new stuff that was better than the old stuff, then the old stuff just sat there. So it was. It ultimately led to some them turning into some business practices that because they needed to start liquidating more products, and stores needed to start liquidating more products.
So they started doing like the really big army box thing, where like this is like a $400 box, and you get like every Signar model,
right?
And it's like, I don't know, $300. It was like 60% off or something like that. And then you already had like a bit of that discounting culture going on with like some. They didn't have the strong trade practices that Games Workshop does, whether you like that or not. It does protect businesses from racing to the bottom to destroy themselves. But you didn't have that protection with War Machine. So like online web stores could literally mark their stuff up as little as like 5%. Yeah. And essentially after shipping and fees, like, are making nothing. And every store is like, why am I selling this on my shop wall? Yeah. You have a bloated range, it's not moving, right?
Yeah, the erosion of value in the secondary market was shocking. I remember because occasionally we would do stuff here with trade-ins and things like that, and the Warhammer stuff would always like maintain a certain I don't know what you call it, value among people, but the War Machine stuff would be like someone might bring, you're like, wow, this is $500 retail, and you're looking at like maybe eBay sales or something, or just like trying to appraise what this could go for and it's like, yeah, you're like, I can give you $50 or something. Like it's like nothing. Yeah. And so once you saw all of these things, these like key indicators, the alarm bells were starting to be like, this is not good. Especially when you go to it's a bad sign when you go to a distributor website and they've got it on sale. So they're now selling it below they're selling it for even less, and the distributor model is already like massive, like it's all volume, low margin to begin with. Yeah. Because they're getting it at like a cost from the manufacturer, and then they're selling it to you for a little bit of a profit, and then they're a middleman in between. And if they're doing 30% off and 40% off, they're trying to get rid of it as fast as they can. Well,
the chain reaction that happens is often like forgotten about, right? So like if Y Hobby Shop has a big War Machine section, and 90% of the wall on the blister rack is like stuff that's really just not moving. You have to times that by 10 or 100 when you go to the distributor level, and it just starts to this backup happens, and then this sort of like mental thing starts to happen. Even if you're still moving and making a bit of money on all the new releases, you start to resent the product a little bit as a store owner, because you're like looking at this huge section you have, and you're like, this just doesn't really sell.
Yeah.
Why am I still committing so much space to this, right?
Yeah.
And inevitably, that's the beginning of the end for a miniature game. Quite frankly.
Yeah. So. They moved on. They tried to do a 3.0, which I think was pretty good as far as I remember. The players liked it, but there was some controversies. They were doing. They were trying again. This is another problem with when a game is like purely focused on the rules. This is something the product was famous for. Everything became game pieces and chess pieces, and the hobby element was missing. Not that people didn't. Lots of people painted their War Machine armies, but most of them didn't. If you went and witnessed competitive events, it was just great.
Well, Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because like that's another. At the end of the day, with Games Workshop pieces, they do cultivate a hobby mentality way more than any other company. So if a model does get culled or is expired, there's still a lot of people that'll even buy that miniature because they like it.
I mean, literally, this is another weekly or very common thing. Like, someone was looking for one of our regulars. They're hunting down extra Mark III Marines of the previous,
the smaller ones,
the slightly small, because he's got a bunch, and he wants to keep them matching, right? So it's
that's not a game piece thing. That's an aesthetic hobby choice.
Pure aesthetic hobby choice.
Yeah.
Because from the gaming perspective, you could use whatever. No one would care. And even then, a Mark III and a Mark IV have the same rules. So
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So the conjunction of now you have game pieces that are only worth what they're worth in the game, based on their rules, and then not so much for their building and painting. So the value would erode even more. So what they would do, they would try to do, I forget what they called it. They called it like the CID or something. They had like they would take models and put them in this like player testing pool, and players could take those rules. So they try to involve the players.
Right. Yeah,
and then something would like, it was weird because they would like release. They'd be like, okay, this is it, and then people would backlash if they didn't like things. So then they would have to change it because they were like, now they were like, because they're working with the community, and now they have to like bend the knee when the community's annoyed. But this doesn't jive with the model releases super well, because if that was supposed to be new release this month, but the players hate the rules for it, so now no one's buying that. Like, see where I'm going with it, right? Yeah. So, anyway,
the customer's always right.
The customer is always right. And either way, fast forward a bit later, you can probably see where this is going. The again, nothing against people that enjoy this game.
No, of course not. We enjoyed it for years.
If you love War Machine, keep loving it, keep playing it. Nothing wrong with that.
We actually argued on your behalf in other videos when we talk about how who cares what companies do. If you have the models and the rules, keep playing it if you like it. The game.
Yeah. So this is more just about how this unfolded. This is factual. You can find it. You can read about it. This is like just literally what occurred with this particular company and its game, and how they approached it. And now they're hanging around. They're a company that's kind of a much smaller entity of what they were. You can even just see it. Big cons, their events are much more scaled down. They used to be in the main halls, and now they're in the side rooms and things like that. The player base, the people that regularly play the competitive events, are smaller. A good chunk of them, actually, a lot of the design team, I believe, is Atomic Mass, so that's kind of happy for them because these guys it wasn't their fault. They were just trying to make rules and make a cool game. And the company itself, I think they went a little bit wider. They made a bunch of little spin-off games that were very cool. We used to carry several of them. There's like a game called Monster Apocalypse, which was
which
cool.
I really like.
A combination of a grid-based board game with kaijus and things like that. Big monsters and robots fighting each other. And I think they're in their fourth ed, but I think they're doing a quasi They're doing some print on demand, I think.
So it's all their models are 3D printed now,
right?
From what I understand, so they've kind of like switched their production line in house, which is like a good way to kind of maintain things. And obviously, the demand is way lower, so they can do that.
I don't know. There's probably a little bit left on some shelves here and there, but just in general, like if you
big War Machine hobby shops that I knew in the last 15 years have both. Complete at this point now, as of like I think a couple months ago, the second one I'm thinking of, they basically have completely removed it from their shop. And these are places that were
it was there
selling thousands of dollars of this stuff a month, so
and running lots of events
and running 40-man events and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's quite a cautionary tale. I don't think the bloat was obviously the bloated miniature range wasn't the only reason they failed. There's a lot of other reasons that maybe we'll make future videos about, I think, that are important, such as what their sort of like ideological game core values were with their game, and I think one of the big pillars of failure was also the fact that they didn't really cultivate a hobby community for their game as well.
I think it was a mistake. I think that was a slight problem there, and I remember I do remember the trailer for Third Ed was this like last gasp effort. They tried to really showcase how cool the game looked, and that there was
a multicultural family play.
I mean, that was awesome. If you want to see what is possibly the cringiest little thing ever for a wargaming company to make, it's you got to watch it. You got to try and find the War Machine.
Hey, if you're the unicorn family out there that plays Warhammer together, God bless you.
God bless you.
But that is so rare.
Yeah, it is. To describe it, basically. I don't know about you, Chris, but I don't know or people watching. I don't know if any of you have happen to have a studio quality game table next to your kitchen.
In the family room?
In the family room.
While I'm holding my awesome child.
Your awesome, probably 1-year-old toddler child.
Yeah.
And you're and you and your wife and child and you're hanging around, and that's how you pass the time that afternoon.
That's how we get by.
You're playing the game. Yeah. So.
Only in dreams, as Weezer says.
That was it's special, but anyway, look, it's a cool game. The narrative and the world they built is incredible. Actually, I thought they had a lot going for them. I think there's an alternate reality where they maybe hopefully that they kind of are able to swerve back on the road again, and they're probably still a big player. But
the funny thing is I think
they had everything. They had all the ingredients they needed.
I think if they had not the person who owns the company running the company, I think they could have come back.
Sure,
they could have made a comeback. But there's this weird, and maybe that's actually kind of a fun video. Is like, how could War Machine make a comeback? But if they just had less of a commitment to like doing things the way they've always done them, and more of a modern kind of like,
they weren't willing to make the really hard decisions.
They weren't. Ultimately,
which as we saw, when a very tiny sliver of Games Workshop's offering was removed, enormous backlash.
They made the hard decision. They make hard decisions. Like whether you like it or not, they make hard decisions. Games Workshop's always made hard decisions. And it's hard to look at it over a long period of time and say that they haven't panned out, right? Like,
They make mistakes too. I mean,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
You know, I know some reviewers. You know, Chris and I may come off as like these like uber GW fanboys.
Simps, I think, is the word that someone used.
Simps, shills.
Oh, it was shills,
spineless, whatever.
Spineless. Whoa,
Spineless.
We've gone too far.
I like the spineless one. That was good. It's creative. Yeah, and sure. Again, and I'm going to continue to mention that yes, I sell Warhammer toys for a living. So I'm going. You know, I need that company to do well, so that I can do well. And but believe me, Chris and I behind the off the camera, there's many times where we are upset with them about something.
Of course,
taking them to task about things. They're not perfect. There's a lot of issues that have come and go. And it's not about me not wanting to like be to talk negatively about on them on camera. I don't care. That's nothing to do with it. It's more to do with the fact that just in general, like the business decisions they make are generally make sense. Also, there's not much I can do about it. Is the other be all end all? Is like
Jay's a very pragmatic person.
You know, when they cut a line or they short ship us something or they say they're doing one thing and they don't do it and we get we're left with being penalized with something that we didn't deserve or whatever. It's not much we can do. All Warhammer comes from one place. Yeah. It's just one or two major warehouses that serve the entire world, and there's no other way to get it. And so, what am I going to do? You know, I can get mad at them, and I do, but ultimately, you just have to roll with it and try and make your store as best as you can. Explain everything to the customers as best as we can. Lots of times, customers ask us, "What do you think of this?" And we'll give them, "Yeah, it's annoying," or "It's BS," or whatever. But
the thing is, and it's really easy to like give the emotional reactionary response.
Sure.
And like we said many times, there's a ton of YouTube channels that just do that nonstop, right?
Yes.
I think what we try to do is we try to both calm down behind the scenes a little bit, and then try to talk about things in clear, kind of concise terms a little bit more, especially from the business side. Try to explain like why would Games Workshop be doing this, right? What like how are they thinking about this, right? Mm-hmm. So, anyways, well, we hope that kind of clarifies that. And if you do have you guys ask your good questions, and we try to answer them as best we can. Sometimes the questions are a little too hard to answer, and just like
Yeah, it's not really justice to go and then try and write, and then writing paragraphs, you get into people being like, oh, now these guys are being mean, or the tone is not right.
And it's hard to set tone and text.
And again, look, the comments are great. Even the incendiary ones, I think, are fine. That's YouTube. I will just say though, remember, everyone can read what you write.
That's true.
And I can respond how I want.
Whoa.
So,
yeah.
No, it's not a threat. It's more just, I think sometimes it's easy to forget that. You can just like fire away messages. But it's different having real discussions in the store. And no, we're real guys. We've been doing this a long time. And I think that's why we do these videos too. It's like, a lot of these takes are not like, it's not something that we just like. I'm not just sitting there and being like, oh, I'm going to say this scripted thing or this thing because it's going to get them. People are going to go nuts or whatever. Like it is based on what we observe here empirically and what happens every day. So anyway,
cool. Well, hope that was informative. We got a little off topic, but I think it was in a good way. I think that's why a lot of people are watching the show. I think you guys like when we ramble a little bit, and we sometimes come full circle, and sometimes we do like one of those like Marvel multiverse timelines where it all splits into a bunch of
I'm the rambly or whatever.
Yeah,
I'm Jay's corner or whatever.
And I've got my thing. I'm like, Jay, you're not on topic at all here.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed that today. So thanks for watching. Give us a like and a subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time for one of these next week.
Thanks.